What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. In this video, we're going to be doing a speed test between the iPhone 15 and the iPhone XR. So the iPhone XR is the oldest iPhone that's capable of running Apple's latest iOS version as of recording this video, being iOS 17. And of course, the iPhone 15 is Apple's newest iPhone generation. So with this video, I want to get an idea of just how noticeable of a difference in performance you're actually going to notice when using the oldest iPhone still supported by iOS 17 compared with the latest generation iPhone on iOS 17. And for some background info, the iPhone XR was released in the fall of 2018, which makes it officially 5 years old, which is absolutely insane. It does not feel like that long ago that this phone was released. But anyways, before we jump into the test, I just want to show you guys that both of these devices are running at their peak performance capability in regards to battery health. Of course, for the 15, this isn't really a factor because it's a brand new device. But for the XR, you can see here, this device is running at the peak performance capability. Of course, as devices get older, sometimes Apple will start throttling the CPU if the battery is, severely degraded. But this iPhone XR has a battery that is in good condition. And of course, they're both running the latest version of iOS 17 as of recording this video. And before we get into the test, I just want to take a moment and thank Anker for sponsoring this video. The Anker Nano Pro is the most compact 20-watt fast charger I've ever seen. It's about the same size as Apple's old 5-watt charger that a lot of you might have laying around, but the Nano Pro here, being at 20 watts, can charge your iPhone up to 3 times faster than the old 5-watt charger. And I put this to the test myself. I was able to charge my iPhone 15 from 0% dead to 50% in just 27 minutes with the Nano Pro, while the old 5-watt charger was only able to charge the same iPhone 15 from 0% dead to 14% in the same 27 minutes. And if you take a look at Apple's 20-watt charger and compare it with the Nano Pro here, which is also 20 watts, you can see here that Apple's 20-watt charger is a lot larger than the Nano Pro, and it's also a bit more expensive. The Nano Pro is much better for portability if you just want to throw it into your pocket or into a bag on the go, all while still being able to charge up your iPhone at those much faster speeds. Anker also offers a wide variety of other advanced chargers for iPhones, including more wall adapters, cables, charging stations, and more. I'll leave a link to where you can find all of Anker's iPhone chargers in the video description down below, and if you use coupon code ANKERTB, you'll get an exclusive 20% off your order. I'm personally a big fan of the Anker Nano Pro, as I like having a compact and easily pocketable charger while still taking advantage of those faster 20-watt charging speeds. Big thanks to Anker for sponsoring this video. But alright, let's jump right into it with some app launching tests. So we're going to start off with some simple apps that you might use in your day-to-day usage. And for simple apps like this, the average difference is, a little less than a second, sometimes 1 to 2 seconds depending on the app. And the XR holds up good here, especially when you consider that there's 4 generations of iPhone in between these two devices. The XR is totally usable, but the 15 does feel snappier. There's little to no lag or stutter on the iPhone 15, it's just lightning quick, where the iPhone XR does hang on launch screens for a little bit longer. I'd say the speed difference is definitely something that you will notice if you were to upgrade from an iPhone XR to an iPhone 15, but the XR is totally usable. I think we've hit a point within the last 6 years or so where Apple's A-series chips, which is the Apple Silicon processors that power all iPhones, have a significant amount of headroom in terms of processing power, resulting in a great longevity, meaning you could hold onto your iPhone for at least 4 to 5 years and it'll maintain solid overall performance in terms of speed and CPU performance. Now, on the other hand, the one factor that makes holding onto an iPhone for many years difficult is battery degradation. Just due to the chemical nature of how batteries function, over the course of several years charging your iPhone regularly, your battery capacity will inevitably shrink the more charge cycles you put your iPhone through. Now, if this wasn't a factor, I honestly think people could hold onto their iPhones for many more years than they do now on average, just because of how future-proof Apple's A-series processors have become. Now, of course, you can't always get a battery replacement done for your iPhone, but a lot of the time it makes more sense to get a new phone rather than investing more money into replacing the battery in your already several-year-old current phone. But regardless, it's still impressive how well iPhones maintain their processing power over the course of several years. And it's also really nice that Apple is still supporting a device that came out back in 2018 with the latest and greatest software updates and features in 2023. And I also want to launch up a few game applications too, and you will see a bigger difference in launch times here, as these apps are more taxing to the processor. For some of these, it was a difference as big as, 10 to 15 seconds for the launch time, and for others, it was around 5 seconds. Of course, it all just depends on the game that you're loading up. But yeah, of course, the more taxing the task is, the bigger gap you're generally going to see between devices that are, a little bit newer and a little bit older. But again, even with these more CPU taxing games and, other tasks as well, the 10R is still totally usable. It's just going to be a little bit more of a delay. And next up, we're going to do a consecutive app launching test. So I'm going to launch the same set of applications on both of these devices, and I'm going to show both devices launching these apps side by side so you can get an idea of how big of a speed difference you're going to see when switching between applications in rapid succession. And kicking things off here, as you can see, basically the same result as we saw with the app launching test that we just did. The 10R just kind of hangs a few applications behind consistently, but it holds its own. It definitely catches up to the 15 just a few seconds later consistently. Again, totally usable, totally good enough. You just will see, again, a little bit of a hang on those launch screens. And once again, just like before, once we eventually get into the heavier games towards the end of the consecutive app launching test, you're going to see a bigger gap between the 15 and the 10R. Again, more CPU taxing, more graphically intensive, the longer it's going to take. But overall, very impressive for the iPhone XR. Again, considering this device is 5 years old up against the latest iPhone that just came out last month, it's doing a very good job competing against the iPhone 15. And we're just going to speed through the remainder of the consecutive app launching test here on the XR, just because those games take a little bit longer to load. And directly following the consecutive app launching test, I want to cycle through the same set of applications again, not for, a speed test, just to check in on the RAM management, to see which applications are still open when cycling through these apps again. And by the way, the iPhone 15 has 6 gigabytes of RAM and the iPhone XR has 3 gigabytes of RAM, so a doubling of RAM with the iPhone 15. And no surprise, the iPhone 15 kept every single application open when cycling through these apps a second time. The iPhone XR was able to keep a lot of them open. The only apps that it was not able to keep open that did have to fully reload that second time were Google Maps, Minecraft, and PUBG, but every other application was still open, which is definitely not bad at all for a 5-year-old phone with 3 gigabytes of RAM. And next, we're going to do a quick Face ID test, just unlocking both devices with Face ID and showing it side by side. You can see here both blazing fast. The 15 maybe just a hair faster than the XR here, but I don't think you'll probably notice that actually in day-to-day life. I think ever since the iPhone XS and XR up until now, Face ID has been pretty quick in my experience at least. And next up, we're going to head on over to Safari and just load a few web pages. Of course, you should keep in mind that this largely depends on the internet connection that you're using, and it also depends on the content of the web pages that you're loading. But as you can see here, the XR does great. It holds up, very well against the iPhone 15 here. Both devices loading up simple pages, on google.com and apple.com easily without a problem. The iPhone 15 having 6 gigabytes of RAM and the XR having 3 gigabytes of RAM. If you have, a ton of tabs open and you're switching between, a lot of them at once, you'll probably see an improvement with the iPhone 15, just, keeping those tabs open and not having to reload them every time. But for casual web browsing like this, you could see, it's a breeze on both. In terms of scrolling smoothness, not just in Safari here, but across everywhere in iOS, again, it depends on, of course, the content that you're scrolling through, but largely you could see here the XR does a great job with that. Apple's optimization just with animations, scrolling smoothness is always top notch, even on their oldest devices that they support. Of course, both of these devices do have 60 hertz display refresh rates, so, it's not going to be that 120 hertz smooth, but in terms of just, overall iOS optimization, in terms of what you'd expect on a 60 hertz display, they're both top notch. And next up, I have the latest version of Geekbench 6 installed on both of these devices, and we're just going to run a CPU benchmark. And of course, as to be expected, when running benchmark apps like this, you're going to see a pretty substantial difference in the numbers. Apple has made a lot of improvements from the A12 chip that's in the iPhone XR all the way up to the A16 chip that's in the iPhone 15. And we're also going to quickly run an Antutu benchmark as well, and same thing here, pretty considerable jumps in the numbers. But as you've seen throughout the video, most people in day-to-day tasks like we've been doing throughout this video are not going to be pushing their phones to the absolute limit, and that's what apps like Antutu do. They're just designed to push it to the limit to really see what the device is truly capable of. But again, for day-to-day tasks, just, surfing applications, social media, web browsing, the difference that you see in these numbers isn't going to be comparable to the difference that you're probably going to see in your day-to-day life. So guys, in conclusion, the iPhone XR held up very good in this test. As I mentioned earlier, I think Apple's A-series processors from the last 6 years or so have a decent amount of headroom, resulting in iPhones performing quite well for 4+ years after their initial launch. This being said though, if you're a 10R user and you're looking to upgrade your iPhone, this is a solid year to do so with the iPhone 15. You'll get a noticeable performance improvement, a better camera, a noticeably better display with the jump from the LCD display technology in the 10R to the OLED display technology in the iPhone 15, and also definitely much better battery life. But again, the iPhone XR is still totally usable in 2023, going into 2024 in terms of its speed and performance. Probably the only real factor making this device hard to use in 2023 going into 2024 is the battery degrading over time. Especially if you've owned the device for, 4 to 5 years, your battery is probably going to be moderately to severely degraded at this point, which may make it hard to get through the day without recharging. But of course, it all depends on how you use your device, how long you've been using your device, whether that's going to be an issue for you. So it all just depends. The iPhone XR, again, in terms of just the processing power, it's holding up pretty good in 2023 going into 2024. Let me know down below in the comments section which iPhone you're currently using and how it's holding up in terms of speed and performance. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and of course, as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.